مرحبا أصدقائي، اليوم سنتحدث عن السياسة الإيرانية.
Marhaban Today we're going to be doing Iran. Starting with theocracy. What is it? It's a system where religious leaders hold political power, and it's all based on religious principles, essentially. So Iran is a theocracy led by Islam and Islamic clerics, and essentially the supreme leader wields ultimate authority under Shia rule. Now, reactionaries. Those are individuals or groups who oppose political or social progress and advocate to return to previous state affairs. Now, keep in mind, this is very swift and very extreme. Reactionaries are extremists. Political recruitment. It's basically the process of selecting and promoting individuals for political positions, and Iran basically uses this to get people who are loyal to the regime and loyal to the clerical institutions, basically. Now, grassroots movement. It's a political movement that is like started from the bottom. It's ordinary people that are really just, starting something big, right? The biggest example of this is the Green Movement because it started as a grassroots protest, basically. Now, a rentier state, it's a country that derives a significant amount of all of its revenue from trading one of its natural resources to another country. Now, Iran, oil, drill, baby, drill. All of that is what that's all it really does. That's their main source of export and their main thing. But what's important is it could be turning into a resource trap, which is essentially where it becomes too dependent on its main natural resource export. It's too much of a rentier state, and it kind of backfires for its economic instability and such. Now, mercantilism. That is a economic system that emphasizes, state control over trade and the accumulation of wealth through exports. Now we see that with Iran because that's how they, run their industries basically. Now, religious fundamentalism. That is a strict literal interpretation of religious text and a desire to enforce religious law in public life. Now, we're going to see that a lot in our cultural terms, basically. So I will get to that in a moment. Historical and cultural terms. Ashura. It's a major religious observance, basically talking about the death of Imam Hussein. Now, it's used by the regime and protest movements, all basically to symbolize resistance, and it's often linked to political messaging. Now, the Shah of Iran. That is the monarch of Iran that was before the 1979 revolution. The revolution of 1979 was a revolution that replaced the monarchy with the Islamic Republic under Khamenei. The O one. Yeah. Now, constitutional revolution. That was a 1905 to 1911 movement that aimed at establishing a parliament and limiting the Shah's power. Basically, it was their first attempt at democracy. Farsi is the Persian language that is spoken in Iran, and Persia is the historical name for Iran before 1935-ish, those areas, basically. Institutions and political figures. So the Majlis are the unicameral one little section parliament responsible for passing legislation. Now, they're elected, but their power's pretty much inferior to the unelected bodies called the Guardian Council. Now, the Guardian Council is an electoral, a clerical body that vets candidates and adherence to Islamic principles. Basically, it takes the law of Islam, the Islamic law, and interprets it and creates rules that adhere to it. Now, the supreme leader is Iran's highest authority, combining religious and political power. So in other places, usually this is separated. Usually you have a monarch who is the figurehead of either the religion or their ceremonial leader. The supreme leader is both of those combined, basically. And if I scroll down a little bit past where I'm supposed to go, the president is the second highest official in Iran. And though he's elected, the president's power is basically inferior to the supreme leader. Now, let me go back to where I'm supposed to be. Political Islam. It is the use of Islamic principles to govern political systems and public life, and that is basically what the Guardian Council does. It takes the law and makes actual laws. Basij is a paramilitary volunteer militia used for internal security and regime enforcement. Basically, it suppresses protests, all that like dissent and all that, and it's a tool of the regime essentially. Now, Revolutionary Guards are a powerful branch of Iran's military, and it protects the Islamic system and influences politics and the economy. Now, the Assembly of Experts. That is an elected body responsible for selecting and overseeing the supreme leader. So technically they are elected, but the assembly is mainly dominated by clerics that are approved by the whole regime. Similar to China, how with the check and the stamp, but it's a little bit more transparent than that. Now, the Expediency Council. It is a body that resolves disputes between the Majlis and the Guardian Council. So it's like it kind of advises the supreme leader, and it's kind of a tool to like consolidate authority essentially. Now, dual society is a term describing the divide between a modern and urban elite and a traditional rural poor population. So it basically means that there is a cleavage between classes basically, and Iran exhibits characteristics of a dual society, and it contributes to their political unrest. Now, Foundation of the Oppressed is a charitable trust that controls large segments of the economy and redistributes wealth. Now, most of these organizations are still tied to the cleric and regime, basically. Now, Banyads, that is the same as the Foundation of Oppressed. It is a governmental foundation, and it manages assets and like funds the regime under like a weakened like private enterprise, basically. Whole lot of jargon. It's basically the same as the Foundation of Oppressed. Now, the nuclear deal. It was an agreement to limit Russia's that was crazy, Iran's nuclear program in exchange for like sanctions relief, basically. Now, it was signed in 2015, but the U.S. actually withdrew from it in 2018, and that kind of like sparked up some tensions, you know what I mean? Now, back to the structure. So the Chief Justice is the head of Iran's judiciary, and he is appointed directly by the supreme leader. Now, that kind of he oversees the courts and all that, but, it does kind of show how it's all kind of run by the cleric. Now, the Principalists. They're a conservative political faction that is loyal to the Islamic Republic and its founding principles, basically. Now, they pretty much dominate Iran's current leadership, and they oppose like reform movements and like approachment with the West and all that. Now, Savak is the Shah's secret police that was before the 1979 revolution. Historical term. Now, the Second Khordad Front is a coalition that kind of won the 1997 presidential election with Khatami, Khat, that one, and it pushed for like civil society and like reform. And it was kind of sidelined by like conservative forces because they didn't want all that, right? Now, the Iran-Iraq War was a war between Iran and Iraq. 1980 through 1988 area, and it solidified the Islamic Republic's identity and empowered their institution, essentially. Now, Operation Ajax was a CIA MI6, coup that tried to remove a certain figure who was the prime minister. His name is Mossadegh. Now, it really didn't, I don't remember if it worked or not, I'm going to be honest with you, but it sparked a lot of anti-Western beliefs, and it's kind of what we see today, and not really why as a whole, but it's a major contributor to Iran's anti-West movement. Now, the White Revolution is a series of modernization reforms launched by the Shah in the 1960s. Now, it was supposed to be really progressive, but it didn't really do much, and it kind of triggered the revolution that it tried to alienate the clerks, basically, and it ended up really backfiring because of, the revolution of 1979. Now that is all of the terms. Inshallah, I will get a 5 on AP Comparative Government.